In our earlier two programs, we have basically learned about the group of microorganisms that was called bacteria, and we have seen that how bacteria can have the beneficial as well as harmful effect to the human body. Today in this program, we are going to study another group of microorganisms, and that is virus. Viruses do not hold any beneficial effect to the human body, rather they are always harmful to the human body, and therefore they cause different type of diseases in the human body. Before going further, let us first understand what is a virus. So virus is such an identity which is not able to grow, respond and eat. It is neither living or non-living. It is in the borderline of living and non-living. Viruses are not in a kingdom. We can place all the microorganisms, for example, your bacteria, fungi, protozoa, in the classification system. But we cannot place the virus in this classification system in any particular kingdom, and therefore viruses have got a different classification system. And also, viruses are not made of cells. A virus particle is typically made of two things. It has a protein, and along with the protein there is presence of the nucleic acid. This nucleic acid can be RNA or it can be DNA. Now when the virus gets inside any cell, it can be a prokaryotic cell, it can be a eukaryotic cell, and therefore the size holds a very important position for its invasion. So let us see the size of the virus particle in comparison to the other microorganisms and in comparison to the other eukaryotic cell. If you look at this picture, you can see the large round shape is the eukaryotic cell, and in comparison to it, we can see a rod shaped bacterial cell which has got a moderate size but smaller than the eukaryotic cell. However, the virus particle that are shown over here, they are very small in size, and because of this extreme small size, they are able to penetrate and get inside the other cells which are known as the host. So when the virus gets inside a bacterial cell, then such type of virus are called bacteriophage. However, there are many other viruses which can get inside the eukaryotic cell and they cause different type of infections. Therefore, a virus is a parasite because it does not have any beneficial effect to the human body. So it is a parasite that depends upon the host organism, and this host obviously has to be a living cell for its reproduction and for its survival. Therefore, we say that a virus may be active or a virus can be latent or dormant. A virus is called as active virus when it is reproducing inside the host cell, and it is in its latent or dormant stage when it is present outside the host cell, which is not able to infect the other host cell. Whenever a virus is active, it has got four characteristic features. Number one is attachment. This is the property of adherence. That means when the virus is active, it is able to adhere to the receptors which are present on the host cell surface. Now this host, mind it, can be a bacteria, can be a eukaryotic cell. The second property a virus has got in its active state is invasion. We call it the ability to invade inside a prokaryotic or inside a eukaryotic cell. The third property is called copying. That means the nucleic acid of the virus is able to penetrate inside or get inside the host cell. It reproduces, increases its number, and then this process is referred to as the copying of the nucleic acid of the virus particle. And the fourth property is called release. That means after the nucleic acid is being produced in large amount and the proteins which are produced in the host cell undergoes the process of packaging, where the nucleic acid gets inside the capsid and the virus particle is released from the host cell. This is referred to as the release of the virus from the host cell. So these four major properties are exhibited by the active virus. However, if the virus is in its dormant or the latent state, it does not exhibit these 4 properties. So, when this virus comes in contact with the human body obviously reacts to it. So, how does the human body react? Let us study this. We say that the human body has got an immune response or a defense mechanism by which it fights against different type of microorganisms or different type of foreign particles that is coming in contact with the human body. Now, this immune response can be innate immunity or it can be adaptive immunity. Here you can see in this picture that the entry of the microorganism takes place which is pathogenic in nature, and after the entry takes place, the first stage is establishment of the infection, because the virus tries to establish its own identity inside the host cell and it stops the replication process of the host DNA. Okay. So, after the establishment of infection, the second process it undergoes is induction of the adaptive immunity, because a foreign particle gets inside and the body which has got the innate immunity is not able to respond, and therefore, the body shows induction of the adaptive immune response. After this immune response is induced, we see the third stage of infection process where the adaptive immune response is elevated at a high amount. And if this response is good enough, it is able to fight back the infection. So, after the adaptive immune response, it may happen that the pathogen may be released.
Ma'am, why does only adaptive immunity work against the virus and not the innate immunity?
A very good question. I told you we have got 2 immunity, innate and adaptive. Okay. The innate immunity is the one which we are getting from our mother. And during the transfer of immunity, we are also getting many maternal microbes. And these maternal microbes are mainly the bacteria, not the viruses. And therefore, the innate immunity can fight against the bacteria. But since there was no viruses in the normal flora which we have acquired from our mother, we have to elevate our own immunity, which is called adaptive immunity after the infection. Now, after the adaptive immune response, the cells have got the memory which is called as immunological memory, because after some time the same type of virus may attack the host cell and therefore the host has got some defense mechanism to fight against that particular virus only. For any infection, the host is an important factor. For viral infection also, they have got a range of hosts in which the infection will take place and will ultimately lead to the disease. The host range of the viral infection is the organism it can infect, and it is based on the virus capsid structure. For example, the smallpox virus is the one which infects the human only. Therefore, we say that except human, we don't have any other host for the smallpox virus. Another virus is poliovirus, which can infect the human and other primates. Rabies virus is the one which can infect the human as well as many warm-blooded animals. So, this is referred to as the host strain. That means the hosts are very much specific for that particular virus. The viral infection should have is tissue specificity. That means within the host there are particular cells or particular tissues which can be infected by a particular virus. For example, human immunodeficiency virus or HIV infects the human white blood cells which are called the T helper cells. So, no other cells of the human body are infected with HIV, only the T helper cells. Whereas, the rabies virus can infect the cells of human nervous system and brain only. So, this is referred to as the tissue tropism or tissue specificity. That means a particular tissue or a set of cells are infected by the virus particle. The entry of the virus is very crucial in order to cause the infection or in order to undergo the process of pathogenesis. The animal virus exhibit 2 different modes of entry inside the host cell. Now, this mode of entry depends upon whether the virus is enveloped or non-enveloped. If the virus is enveloped, that means it has got an envelope. For example, you can see the HIV virus, which shows the presence of spikes. Now, these spikes are proteinaceous in nature and they are very much specific for a particular cell type and in a particular host range. So, the host cells have got receptors on the surface of the cells, and to these receptors the spikes of the virus attach together. When the spikes attach to the receptors which are present on the host membrane, they fuse, and ultimately after this fusion, the virus particle which is having the capsid along with the nucleic acid, we call it nucleocapsid, gets inside the plasma membrane of the host cell, and after this the uncoating of the viral nucleic acid in the host cell. However, if the virus is a non-enveloped virus, as you can see the case of adenovirus, which does not have any envelope, but the receptors are present on the surface of the plasma membrane of the host cell. The capsid have got certain proteins which bind to the receptors of the host cell. And after the capsid proteins bind to these receptors, there is formation of an invagination of the plasma membrane. As a result, it pinched off from the outside environment and there is a formation of an endosome. Therefore, we see the nucleocapsid is present inside the endosome. After the endosome exhibits the acidic nature in its internal environment, the nucleocapsid is released in the host cell and later on it undergoes the process of uncoating when the viral nucleic acid is released from the capsid. And therefore, you can see the endosome formation is a typical character of the non-enveloped viruses. However, endosome formation is not seen in the case of viruses which are enveloped. Viruses can have a nucleic acid which can be DNA or it can be RNA. Now, the replication of the DNA virus differs from the replication of the RNA virus. The DNA viruses replicate taking the help of the nucleus of the host cell. They inject their DNA. This DNA, which is a viral DNA, gets inside the nucleus of the host cell and the transcription process takes place after the replication. We have the formation of the DNA and this DNA is now packed inside the capsid. Capsid can be synthesized in the cytoplasm and transported near the nucleus. The spikes or the envelope has to be formed and these envelope proteins are synthesized in the cytoplasm of the host cell, not inside the nucleus. And in this way, after the total virus particle is being formed inside the host cell, it is thrown off from the host cell. That means a single viral particle infects the host cell and you have the production of numerous virus particles inside the host cell.
Ma'am, why is only the nucleic acid of the virus is injected into the nucleus and not the protein coat of the virus?
We know that virus is made of a protein and a nucleic acid. If the protein coat is injected inside the host cell, that means the host cell will be able to produce antibodies against that protein coat. The viruses are very clever. They do not want to inject the protein coat because they don't want to have the defense mechanism against them. And therefore, they inject only their nucleic acid, not their protein coat. When we say the replication of the RNA viruses, we basically refer to the viruses which are plus strand of RNA virus. So, this plus strand of RNA virus acts as the mRNA, so they don't need the help of the nucleus. In the cytoplasm only, this replication process takes place where the plus strand gets transcribed or is converted to the negative strand of the RNA and the negative strand again transcribes the complementary RNA which is a positive RNA. This positive RNA is now capped or it is packaged inside the capsid proteins. The capsid proteins are synthesized in the cytoplasm. So, we see that the replication of the RNA viruses do not need the help of the nucleus of the host cell. They can be synthesized or replicated inside the cytoplasm of the host cell and then they are released from the host cell. The outcome of the viral infection can be two things. either the person suffers from a disease or the person does not suffer from the disease, rather the person becomes the reservoir of the virus. Because I told you the virus needs the help of a living tissue, and the human is a very good living tissue for the virus to replicate and survive. So how these two outcomes result, let us see. When the animal virus infects the host cell, if the replication of the virus takes place, then we call it a productive infection. That means the human suffers. The human shows different signs and symptoms, different clinical manifestations appear in the human body, and it may happen that the lysis of the cell takes place and the death of the host cell occurs. So this is when a person is diseased, which ultimately leads to the death. However, it may happen that the virus particle which has get inside the host cell does not kill the host cell. That means the lysis of the host cell does not take place, but the budding of the viral particle is continuously taking place. So this is a substrate or a residence of the virus particle, and it exploits the human cell for its own manufacturing process. That means it becomes the industry for the virus particle in order to synthesize its own viral particle, though it does not develop any sign and symptoms or any clinical manifestation. So the host survives. The host becomes the reservoir of the virus particle. The second stage can be when the viral particle does not reproduces such actively and it goes to the latent or the dormant stage. We call it a latent infection. In this case also, the host does not show such severe signs and symptoms, but the host survives, though it may be having the virus particle, and if the adaptive immune system is very well elevated, it can fight back the infection of the virus particle. The first important disease or a very commonly occurring disease is influenza caused by influenza virus. Commonly this is also known as flu. Here we see each and every part of the human body experiences or shows different signs and symptoms. For example, we have got chills, fever, sore throat, muscle pain, severe headache, coughing, and a sort of weakness or fatigue. So there is a general discomfort of the human body when the person suffers from influenza. Influenza virus has got two important glycoproteins on their surface which help in their pathogenetic process. This is HA, hemagglutinin, and neuraminidase, which is NA. HA helps in binding of the virus to the surface of the host cell and therefore helps in the process of entry. The first stage which is required for the infection is entry. NA on the other hand is involved in the release of the progeny viruses. That means the virus particles that are produced inside the host cell have to be released from the host cell, and therefore NA helps in the release of the newly synthesized virus particle from the host cell. If we come to the evolution of the different influenza viruses, we see that there is one influenza virus which is called H1N1 influenza virus, which gets typically infected from a bird. Therefore, the bird is having this virus, and when we take the meat of the bird or eggs of this bird, we get the virus. And this virus is now called H1N1 human virus. When this virus gets reassorted with another avian virus, for example H2N2 virus, we have development of a new influenza virus which has got two different type of genomes, one of avian origin and the other one from human origin. Another virus which may evolve from H2N2 is when we have reassortment with the H3 avian virus. So we have development of another influenza virus which is having three different types of genome, two coming out from the avian source and one of the human source. Like this way, we can have evolution of different influenza viruses in the environment.
Ma'am, why is influenza so frequent in nature? Don't the memory cells that were raised against the previous infection of the virus work against the secondary invasion of the influenza virus?
The memory cells have got the memory or defense mechanism against a particular virus. Now this virus was H1N1. When the H2N2 infects the host cell, they do not have any defense mechanism against the newly evolved influenza virus, and therefore it becomes very difficult for the host cells or for the host defense mechanism to fight against the evolving type of influenza viruses. If we go on for the replication of the influenza virus, we see that this influenza virus, which has got HA and NA on its spikes, that is on its outer surface, get adhered to the host cell. These are basically the mucosal cells of the throat, mouth or pharynx. So, they get inserted and the viral RNA which is there in the influenza virus gets inside the nucleus, which after transcription process and after replication synthesizes its number. The translation of the proteins is done in the cytoplasm of the host cell, which is now packaged along with the nucleic acid. HA and NA now forms a bulging structure on the host cell membrane and it pinches off, and therefore the new virus particles are being formed which are released.
Ma'am, how can influenza virus be controlled?
Influenza viruses can be controlled if we could control the process of uncoating of the nucleic acid from the capsid, because that is very essential. The formation of endosome in which the virus gets inside and then the uncoating takes place. So, if we can stop the uncoating process, we can take control of the influenza virus. The second important viral disease is polio, which is also called poliomyelitis. We can have three different types of infections with the polio. The first type is called the subclinical infection, where the person are basically the reservoirs of the polio virus. Okay, they show some signs of illness or sore throat or fever or mild headache or nausea feeling, but they are basically the reservoirs of the polio virus. The second type of polio we come across is non-paralytic. That means we don't find any paralysis of the muscles or any muscles of the human body, but they show the common symptoms of fatigue, the nausea feeling, then headache, muscle stiffness, and the pain over the calf muscles can be felt. So, this is called the non-paralytic polio. It may last for a week or two. The most deadly one is the paralytic polio. Here we see the paralysis of the muscle takes place. Now, the human brain is having three parts: cerebrum, cerebellum and medulla. The medulla is also called the brain stem. So, if the brain stem is affected with the polio virus, it causes the paralysis of the respiratory muscles. However, if the lower portion of the spinal cord is affected by the polio virus, we have paralysis of the lower limbs and therefore the person is not able to walk. The polio virus is very small and it is basically a transient inhabitant of the gastrointestinal tract of the human, and therefore the vaccine of the polio virus is always given in the mouth in the oral form so that it can get inside the gastrointestinal tract of the human, and it is having the RNA as the genetic material. Another infection of virus is called smallpox. Now, smallpox virus is somewhat brick shaped and it has got the core membrane and the genome is DNA in nature. Smallpox is caused by variola major or variola minor. This is a type of DNA virus which takes the help of cytoplasm rather than the nucleus. Therefore, the whole process of replication of this virus takes place in the cytoplasm only. The symptoms in the smallpox are formation of macules after you have formation of ananthums. Ananthums are reddish spots and ananthums develop into macules. Macules are the vesicles or the vacuoles which are filled with water. Another common disease is measles. Again, in measles we find the presence of small reddish, dark reddish or pinkish color spots all over the body. First it develops on the forehead and then it spreads to the body. The measles are basically caused by morbillivirus, which are enveloped single-stranded negative sense RNA viruses, and the common symptoms can be fever, cough, conjunctivitis. So, we say that measles are associated with three C's. The first C is meant for cough, the second C is meant for coryza, that means running nose, and the third C is conjunctivitis, red eyes. Another disease is called rabies, which is again a viral infection. This is a viral neuroinvasive disease and it is zoonotic. That means it gets transmitted by the animals. Zoo refers to the animals. It basically affects the brain and you have encephalitis of the warm-blooded animals. In the rabies virus, we have got an RNA genome, and this RNA genome of the virus encodes 5 important genes. These 5 important genes are nucleoprotein, phosphoprotein, matrix protein, glycoprotein and viral RNA polymerase. And these 5 important genes are very essential for the pathogenesis of the disease. The symptoms are, the common symptoms seen is confusion, agitation, there is development of delirium, that means the memory loss is seen in the person, and a very common symptom that we come across in rabies is hydrophobia. There is excessive amount of production of your saliva and tear. The person is not able to swallow in later stages because the lower jaw and the throat become paralytic in nature. So, the person even if feels hungry or thirsty is not able to take in water or any food. This is called a condition hydrophobia. So, viruses are never beneficial to the human body. If any virus attacks the human body, that means it will lead to a disease progression which may be severe, which may be dreadful for the human body.